Welcome to another edition of The Evans Life, a remarkable adventure. Bob and Diane Evans here. We are the parents of 18 children and are sharing our remarkable adventure with you. On the podcast today, we are delighted to welcome Jason and Heather Orm, who are joining us right there, waving at us if you're watching on YouTube. Heather,
hi, sweetheart.
Hi, you guys.
Hi, boys.
So good to see you. Heather is a social media influencer with 204,000 followers on Instagram. She is an adoptive mother of Irish twins and a princess. She is a bonus mom to 2 boys. She is a nurse practitioner, and she is a chicken lady.
That's right.
What is a chicken lady?
I don't even know. If people who have chickens know the obsession. Once you get them, I don't know. It's just one of those things. You fall in love with chickens. Who knew, right?
Oh my gosh, how funny.
Yeah.
You used to do Barbie dolls when you'd play with Leslie.
I know, right?
Yeah. Heather and our daughter Leslie grew up together in our hometown here, and so we are familiar and love their family very much. Jason, by the way, who is seated right next to Heather on the couch, is a design engineer for a corporate security company. He develops electronic security systems for companies around the world. And they are a blended family that we're going to learn about. Heather, your story is truly remarkable. Along the way, you lost your mother and sister to addiction, which affected you deeply, and we'll get into that. But you also became, as I said, a social media influencer while adopting 3 children and co-parenting Jason's 2 sons, who came into the family through marriage as well.
And so don't forget her healthy lifestyle, losing over 80, almost 90 pounds. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. That's inspiring just in and of itself. So you guys are amazing, and your beautiful little family. And introduce us to your family.
So this is Andy. Andy, can you wave hi?
Hi, buddy.
Hi, Andy.
And we adopted Andy in 2017. And then 4 months later, another birth mom contacted us and we adopted Ellis.
Hi,
Ellis.
They are only 4 months apart. They will be in the same grade. And everything. They start preschool in the morning.
Fun.
Yay. And they are best friends and frenemies as well. You can see it just, it's one of those things. And then we adopted our little princess last year, and this is Lola. She is 14 months old.
Oh, you guys are beautiful.
And then we have 2 of our older sons, and they're at school right now. Our 10-year-old lives with their mom. And then our 14-year-old just moved in with us permanently, and he is in high school.
And what are their names?
Tegan is 14 and Braxton is 10.
What a fun group. She can go play if she wants to. And we just wanted everybody to see how precious they are.
Yeah.
Put her down. He's gonna go entertain her for a second and go put her down.
Perfect timing. Well, while Jason's off playing dad here for a second, Heather, do you want to tell us, maybe rather than start there, let's start with Heather's story, and then Jason can come back.
Right, that's a good idea.
For that. So I knew you as a girl with hair like mine that we have to straighten to get it smooth, right? So you had curly hair.
Yeah.
Your mom, we were sweet friends at church. We'd always sit by each other. But you have a sibling that's adopted too, right?
I do. So my little sister, Ashlyn, she was adopted. She's actually the one that passed away.
I didn't realize that was.
Yeah. So she was also adopted. And then also my little brother was adopted as well. And I actually have custody of him. So like physical guardianship of him.
Okay. So. And so you grew up, decided to be a nurse. Take it from there. I mean, you and Leslie used to play together. I remember Barbies everywhere. So Leslie's our oldest daughter, and her and Heather, I think, are the same age, right?
Yep, same exact age. So I've known her since 2nd grade.
Okay.
So,
wow.
So, yeah. And Heather's just transformed. I mean, you've done it all. You've become an incredibly strong woman.
Thank you.
Tell us what started first, the weight loss, the journey with your mom and sister. What I mean, people don't even know what we're talking about yet, but
No, that's okay. So, well, I guess we can kind of back it up. I guess you kind of have to go right back to the very beginning of it all. So we were just the, typical religious family here in Utah, and, going to school and everything. Both my parents were working individuals, and then unfortunately my mom did have back surgery, and then got hooked on pain pills. And that was a thing that we dealt with throughout our childhood. And we, went through like the rehab stages and everything else. And then my parents ended up splitting apart in 8th grade, when I was in 8th grade, and things kind of got a little bit worse. And so then I graduated high school early when I was 17, and I had grown up like morbidly obese my whole life. Tried various things and everything like that. And then after high school, I moved out when I was 17 and started college at 17 up at the university, and went to achieve my nursing degree. During that time, I lost 100 pounds.
Oh, it's 100. Awesome. Congratulations.
At that time, it was 100 pounds.
Yeah, but that's
not healthy the way that I did it.
Okay.
I think I was going through like emotional stuff, developed, like the eating disorder and everything else, which honestly was one of the worst time periods, I would say, of my life. But then I went and I enrolled myself in some therapy, which I think therapy is great for everybody. And basically was able to like process why I went through all of that and everything else. My little sister, Ashlyn, who passed away, stayed living with my mother. And then my other little sister, Megan, went to go and live with my dad at that time. And so to wrap everything up as far as that goes, I went to college. I graduated as an RN at 21. And so I have been a nurse for 17 years. I worked in the ER for 12 of those years. And then I went back to school and got my master's degree 5.5 years ago and became a nurse practitioner. So, and that's what I currently do, is work as a nurse practitioner, and I do aesthetic injections with a cosmetic surgeon. So that's my schooling pathway as far as that goes. And then over the years of traveling the world and 3 college degrees later and everything else, I had fluctuated in my weight, gained and lost and gained and lost. And so 6 years ago is when I met this guy. He was newly divorced and a little weird.
But he's sitting right there, Heather.
That's okay. I think everybody goes through like that kind of weird stage, but we actually met online. We went on one date. It was so sweet. We went and he took me up and we did tinfoil dinners at the canyon.
Oh, how fun.
And then
that must have swept you away.
Yeah, it was great. But then we never talked again. So,
oh dear.
Yeah, we never even talked again after that. So
the tinfoil dinners don't necessarily work that well. Is that what you're saying?
They were a good one, but they didn't quite seal the deal. So, then we actually reconnected again, online again, and 3 years later. And he swiped right, I swiped right, but then we never talked. And he hunted me down on Facebook.
Oh.
And messaged me on there and said, "Hey, do you remember me? I would like you to give me another chance and take me
and the
out."
tinfoil dinners.
Yeah. And we've been together ever since. So here we are 6 years later with 5 kids and 4 moves, 3 jobs, and it's been a whirlwind of awesomeness. So
Jason, we you got to weigh in here, bud, and tell us the real story.
Yeah. Well, I told her, first of all, she's not allowed to tell the story of how we met, the fact that we met online. I mean, I guess it's more commonplace nowadays, but I never wanted her to tell anyone that we met on Tinder, but
it worked. It worked.
You're living proof that it worked.
Yeah, I've got a nephew that met his wife on Tinder, so it's all good, man.
I guess it's the way things are nowadays, but No, yeah, it was definitely been a whirlwind. You know, I'm a pretty structured, organized kind of guy, and her being an ER nurse, she's scattered and chaotic, and that's how my life has been ever since we've been together.
Been the best 6 years of his whole life.
Yeah, it's chaotic.
Well, awesome. So you two fell in love.
Yes.
Did
Yeah.
you had two children that you were a bonus mom to now.
Mhm.
Mhm.
When did you decide that you wanted to share children together? And how did you navigate that?
Well, I think the main thing was, you know, for me, the big thing was finding a spouse that I knew would accept my two oldest boys and love them as their own. And the when we reconnected, you know, 3 years later after meeting the first time, she had just graduated school. She hadn't really started working yet. I was working full time, and she spent that whole summer, that first summer that we were together, with the kids, and I could just see this connection with them. And she was she was great. She was incredible, the way that she treated them, the way that they responded to her. And I mean, I knew that that was what I wanted. That was exactly what I'd been hoping for. And so that was it for me. And I think the connection she had with Tegan and Braxton was an indicator to her that we were supposed to be together. And you know, aside from the relationship that her and I had, and as our relationship progressed, we knew that we wanted to have kids, and obviously she knew she couldn't have them. And I knew that no matter who I ended up with at my age, I was either going to inherit kids myself or end up having kids with whoever I ended up with. And so I was on board with it.
Wow, what a sweet
That
story.
that is really something. Now you mentioned that Heather, along with this is part of your story too.
Yeah.
Tell us about that uh, that inability to have children and how that affected you growing up, and your relationship with Jason as it developed.
You know what? And I can honestly say, like, this one's it's an emotional thing because, you know, like 1 in 8 women deal with infertility. And so it's something that I feel very passionate about and love talking about. And it led us to the pathway where we're at now. My story is a little bit different because I actually had a hysterectomy at 6 weeks old. They thought I had what's called pyloric stenosis, which is basically a twisting of your intestines that little babies can get. And so they did an ultrasound in my belly. And like I said, this is a story like a really long time ago. So I'm getting, you know, what I can from my parents. But they did an ultrasound and noticed that my female insides like weren't all hooked up right in there. Everything was there, but it wasn't hooked up correctly. So they got geneticists involved and everyone else. Nothing came back on like genetic wise. And so 38 8 years ago, they decided to just take it all out. So they took out the non-functioning inside. And so basically at that point, I became like a postmenopausal grandma, and I had a hysterectomy. So I didn't find out until I was 13, however, right before obviously going into puberty, and then I sat down with my pediatrician and parents. And then that's when they told me, you will never be able to give birth to a child. And, you know, I started on hormonal replacement and everything else. And it was at that time, it's like when Angelina Jolie got big and everything like that. And so I started researching adoption. And I just knew from that moment that that was going to be my option and what I was going to be, you know, blessed with. Now, fast forward, I dated a ton of people, and I never told one single person ever. Hundreds and hundreds of guys, never told one about that.
Hundreds and hundreds. Like you dated a few people. It's not say it's hundreds and hundreds.
5 or 10. Okay. 5 or 10.
Okay. Or hundreds and hundreds.
But she still picked you, Jason, so you're safe.
Yeah, she was the last one you picked. So
I guess it doesn't matter. As long as
Yeah. It's almost a better story.
We started dating. And then when we kind of knew that we were going to progress further before we got engaged, I sat down with him. And I knew that I had to tell him because it's a big deal. It's something that defines who I am and everything else. And we were completely open from like literally our first date. But this was just something that it's just so sacred and secret to me.
Mhm.
And I sat down and I looked at him and I started crying. And he thought I was breaking up with him.
Oh dear.
And I said to him, I said, I love you, but I just want you to know, like, I will never be able to birth a child. I'll never be able to give you that. And I understand if you don't want to be with me anymore because of that.
See.
And he looked at me and he grabbed my face and he said to me, it doesn't matter because however we're supposed to have kids is how we're meant to have them. And I knew right then that this was who I was supposed to end up with the rest of my life. And it's 100% true. And so we started looking at adoption together and got excited about it. And we got married a few months later and we started on our adoption journey at that point. So
wow, what a sweet moment, Jason, because
Yeah.
as a woman, that's something that you hope to share with the person that you love. And now you both know that there are other ways to do that. But your response to her, I'm guessing, Heather, changed the trajectory of your love and your confidence with him. And just what an incredible man he is and how perfect he would be for you.
he really is. Like, I scored big time. I married up all day, every day.
Home run with all the bases loaded.
Home run with all the bases.
I'm
Oh.
just a smooth talker.
Yeah.
He's a good salesman.
Uh-huh.
No, well, let's go back for just a second too, because Heather, I want to dig down or drill down just a little bit more on what happened in your heart in that moment when your parents told you that, sweetheart, you're never going to have children, biological children, and then if you can compare that to that moment when Jason was so open and loving and accepting of you just the way you were. Talk to us about that feeling at 13 versus that feeling when Jason let you know that it's all right.
I honestly feel like it's hard because at 13, I don't think you're mature enough to really understand the magnitude of that. And to understand as you get older what it would be like to, get pregnant or give birth or see certain characteristics in yourself and to your children or anything like that. I think those type of things it's not really what you think in your head at that point. And so I think at the time I kind of was just more of in shock, but at 13, I mean, you care about, going hanging out with your friends. And so I don't think I really understood the magnitude of it until I got into dating, until I got into the point of like dating and meeting people and meeting and seeing my friends get married and having children. I honestly can tell you that I thought I was never going to get married. And that also was going to play a factor into it. Almost that I was flawed and that nobody would ever accept me or want me because of that. And I know that sounds ludicrous in my head to say it out loud. But I think we're programmed in society to say that women are supposed to get married, get pregnant, and have babies. And I just wasn't as privy to knowing that it really is 1 in 8 people experience infertility. And so when I shared that secret with him and he responded the way that he did, it's almost like this weight was lifted. It's almost like a piece of me finally felt whole and felt like I am not flawed. I am the way that I was supposed to be made, and that I can be accepted. And it almost started a whole new pathway in life of that I can now tell my story to people, because there's very select few people in my life who ever even knew that about me.
Mhm.
And now millions of people know that about me. So I think it went from like this, one flip of feeling flawed to feeling empowered almost.
And he made you feel safe, I would guess.
Absolutely.
Jason, we got to hear what was in your heart in that moment when she was crying and you thought she was breaking up with you.
I mean, I did. I wasn't sure what she was going to tell me, and I don't know that it was necessarily prefaced with any kind of we'd been talking about marriage and things like that, but I think we were maybe talking about Tegan and Braxton and the relationship that they had, and they'd spent some time at that point throughout the summer, and so when she told me that, I didn't really think anything of it other than I don't know why she's so been out of shape about this, because I really felt however we're supposed to have kids, they will be our kids. However our kids are supposed to come to us, they will be our kids, and we will love them as if they were our biological kids, and we do. And I've shared this story before, and when we were at the birth of each of our 3 adopted children, and having biological kids myself and being at their births, I can tell you that the feeling I had, kind of like that descending light, tunnel vision, focused on the child, like that is your child. That feeling I had with Tegan and Braxton, it was no different with our 3 other kids. And
how do you account for that?
Say what?
How do you account for that feeling of these children are no different from your biological kids?
They're not. I know in my heart and my soul that they were meant to be our children, and I think that they know that they are our children as well. They know it in their hearts, and I think even though biologically we're not related, we are the world aligned and said that this family needs to be together, and I feel that to be completely true.
I have one thing to say, actually, that comes from you, Diane. When we started the adoption process, I had called Diane to ask her kind of about it, because you guys are like the gurus on adoption.
That's
And
very kind of you, but
because the adoption process is very lonely. It is, because there's so many pathways that you can go. There's so many options out there. There's a lot of like scamming and everything else that goes on. And I remember this vividly, and Jason can attest to this. And because I was so mad at the time, you had said to me, Heather, you just need to believe that your children will find you. And I remember getting off the phone and being like, what's that supposed to mean? We've been waiting here and they're supposed to just find me? Like how? What, do they just knock on my door? And I remember being frustrated about that. And I remember that when we got the phone calls, because the adoption story is a lot longer as far as like how we found Andy and Ellis, or how they found us. And I remember looking at Jason and saying, Diane was right. They do find you, and they 100% will find you in the craziest ways. And I know for a fact that all 3 of them were supposed to find us. And I can honestly tell you guys 100%, I would choose my infertility all day, every day, over and over and over again, if I knew that this is what I would get in the end.
And Heather, I have to say something, because let me ask you a question. Do you read the end of the book first?
I haven't read a book since grad school, so I don't even remember.
Okay. So you kind of have some of that, like you love the control of things because
Absolutely.
emergency rooms chaotic, 3 little babies plus older kids can be chaotic, but you are in charge. And so when I said that they will find you, because I'm sitting here going, oh gee, Bob's looking at me going, they will find you, quit doing this. But that probably was the hardest thing that I could have said to you, because we're like, take charge. Okay, you tell me this, and this. I'm going to follow that list. I'll check everything off. I will get my baby. Here I go.
Yep.
But you're telling me it doesn't happen that way, right?
Not happen that way. And that is where like the preface comes in of how our children came to us, which is the craziest story, I think, out of any of them, and how they really did find us.
Well, we want to hear that.
Yeah, tell us
sure.
that story.
So you got married and started working on this adoption idea, right?
Yep. So we started working on the adoption process. We got approved, everything else. We got approved on June 14th of 2017. Basically we wanted to do it privately, because when you go through an agency, it can be anywhere in Utah from 50 to 80,000. And we wanted to see and take our chances of, seeing if we could do it privately. So we put posts out there on social media, and at this time I only had I think 30,000 followers on Instagram. So we did a post on Facebook, we did a post on Instagram, and then a website called adoption.com, which basically just houses like a profile for you, and then anybody can contact you. Unfortunately, when you do it this way, you are privy to a lot of scammers. And unfortunately, there are a lot of mentally ill people who do take advantage of people, and they will contact you, send you fake pregnancy photos, steal photos of ultrasounds.
Oh, really?
And talk to you for months. And there's emotional scammers, and then there's also financial scammers, that because we are vulnerable and because that's something that we want, they take advantage of that, unfortunately. And we kind of braced ourselves for that. So we actually were contacted in September by somebody on Facebook, and they were out of St. Louis, Missouri, and they sent a message that said, hey, I have a friend and she's pregnant, but she doesn't have a phone, red flag. And I was wondering if you guys would be interested. So usually 2 red flags: when a friend contacts and says my friend's pregnant, 2, when they don't have a phone. 2 red flags, plus they don't live anywhere near us. So we're like, okay, sure. So on Labor Day weekend, so this weekend.
Oh, so your anniversary is coming up of that.
Yeah. We got a phone call from a birth mom in St. Louis, Missouri, who said, I am pregnant and I can't take care of this child. I'm not in the position to do this. I've seen your pictures, profiles. I would love for you to adopt this baby. However, she didn't know when she was due. She didn't know who the birth father was. And so we continued to talk, and we actually FaceTimed and fell in love with this woman. She's an amazing human being, and we became friends. However, she never gave us proof, which is a big deal. You have to have proof of an ultrasound with a correct name and everything else on it. So we kept our profile out there. 1 month later, exactly, I told Jason, I said, I think this is true. I want to do this. Let's cancel and we can delete all of our stuff on adoption.com because you have to pay a monthly fee. And he said, I think we should renew it one more time, just in case. So it was going to delete that day, and we renewed it that day. The next day, it was about midnight, I received a message from a woman that
we both got emails, because we were both getting emails.
That's right. We both did, and we both woke up and looked
everywhere.
at it. Yeah, we both looked at it, and it was a very odd message. It said, time is of the essence.
Yeah, the way she the way
which
she
is funny
worded it,
because
she said, time is of the essence. I'm
pregnant and I have a dinosaur phone. I can only text you with 160 characters per text. And I'm just like, this has got to be a scam. So I wrote her back, never heard anything. 4 days later, she said, I live here in Utah and I want to meet up with you. So that was on a Thursday. She said, I'll meet you on Sunday at a diner in Provo. And so me and Jason thought, well, it can't hurt. At least we can get breakfast, if we get split up. So we showed up to this diner, 30 minutes goes by and we're like, well, I guess we're scammed. and we were about to order breakfast, and all of a sudden a woman walked in, and she was very pregnant. She walked in with her mom. We both stood up. We gave each other hugs, and we sat down, and she gave us ultrasound photos and said, I looked at your profile a few months ago, but she had only printed them off, basically. So she didn't have internet access, so she had printed off just one page of our photos. She had chosen another family in Seattle, and then they decided they did not want open adoption. And so she decided she did not want that. And she said, I contacted you then a few days ago. And she said, there's a few things that I love about you guys. You always look happy with your guys' children, and you guys like to do adventures, and that I was in the medical field. And she said, I just feel like I connect with you. And then the baby started kicking in her belly, and she asked if I wanted to feel her belly in the middle of this diner.
More chills.
Yeah, so I felt the little baby inside of there, and we got to the end of breakfast, and she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, what do you mean?
What do you mean? Yeah.
And she said, will you adopt my baby boy and love him forever?
Oh.
And we both just started sobbing in the middle of a diner in a small town in Utah. And 21 days later, we watched as our son Andy was born. And it was, we were there with birth dad and birth mom. It was one of the most amazing, miraculous moments of our entire lives, hands down. We still have open adoption with them. Wonderful human beings. We love them to death. They do get to see Andy. We do text and talk to them. But when Andy was 2 months old, we then got a phone call from the first birth mom. And she had known that we had adopted, and we had told her and told her, say, hey, like, we never got proof, good luck. I hope everything goes okay. And she was upset about it. But then she called me while I was holding Andy. And like I said, he was only 2 months old. And she said, hey, I have ultrasound photos, and I'm doing 6 weeks with a baby boy. And I know that he is supposed to be a part of your family as well. Will you adopt him? And I'm standing there like this, like, what is Jason going to say? He's going to absolutely lose it.
Hi, honey.
Signed divorce papers already. Like, get out of here.
She had to do some fancy talking at that point.
Oh boy.
I talked to him about it, and we decided to think about it for about 2 weeks. Because it's a big deal. We have 2 older sons that we traveled out of state every other weekend to go pick up and then take home. And we had a newborn. We both worked,
It was a really, I would say, the hardest decision of our 3 adoptions, because we had just had Andy, and I knew we had talked about adopting more than one kid, but I don't think either of us were ready to adopt another baby at that point. And so when we said we're going to take a couple weeks to talk about it, or to think about it, I told Heather, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to mull it over with each other. I want us to think about it independently, so that one person can't sway the other's opinion. And that's what we did. And we didn't talk about it, and I wouldn't let her talk about it. And so 2 weeks came and went. And when we did sit down to talk about it, I was like, yeah, okay. I feel like this is something that we need to do. And Heather felt the same way. And it was at that moment that we made that decision to.
We were in the Walgreens parking lot, weren't we?
We were in a Walgreens parking lot, talking about this. I don't know what brought it up, but we decided then and there that we were going to go ahead and adopt. And I think at that point, we had about a week to make it out to Missouri before Ellis's birth mom delivered Ellis. And so we made arrangements and packed up
our 4-month-old at that time,
and Andy, and
headed out to St. Louis.
Headed out there, got there on a Monday, and he was born on a Wednesday. So
That
Wow.
is remarkable.
We hear this story often, not all the time, but often, that one baby will fall on the heels of another, or they will find you kind of when you aren't expecting it.
Mhm.
Tell us something that could help somebody listening to this, for the first time. They're just going into this arena of adoption and it doesn't make sense. I mean, I know it doesn't make sense. You guys know it doesn't make sense. But tell them what your brain, what your mind, what your heart did. I mean, I don't know if you believe in God or a higher power or the power of the universe, but give them a little quick tutorial on what they could expect or how they could feel what you felt to get the courage to do something that kind of was not in the plan yet, not your plan yet, the universe's plan, but not yours yet.
I there are, like Heather said, there's so many, and I'm sure as you guys have found, there's so many emotions that come into play with adoption, and because it is such a personal thing, where a family, a couple aren't able to have children biologically. Anytime a opportunity presents itself to adopt a kid, they a lot of times are vested in it emotionally and mentally, and I really tried, and I tried to help Heather to be, I guess, cautiously optimistic, kind of keep that wall up a little bit, and that's one thing that I feel helped, because it kind of helps you weed through some of the people that may be kind of dishonest, or that may be trying to pull a scam or whatever, and we talk about that and don't want to scare anybody away by any means, but it is something that's out there. But we kind of kept our guard up a little bit until it was something that we felt was right, and it really is. Like, we believe the stars aligned. We do believe in a higher power, and we believe that God felt that these kids were meant to be our children, and like you said, they kind of come into your life, and the opportunity presents itself in a way where you feel reassured mentally and emotionally that this is going to happen, and it does.
Mhm.
It's like, when things are going to start to progress, and when the adoption is going to go through, and it's a feeling. There's a little bit of anxiety, but there's a feeling of comfort and
Reassurance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit, both of you, talk to us a little bit about how you go from the feeling and realization that this is how it was meant to be. How do you convert feeling that into action, and how do you move forward when you're kind of going, I don't know about this, but then that feeling comes, and how do you translate that to motion?
I think there's always going to be hesitancy, period. I think that there's just hesitancy with anything. I think, as he kind of said, like, I'm very like all in type of a person, and he's the one that's more hesitant. So he was always like, everybody's almost a scammer type of a thing, until proven otherwise. And I was just like, oh, I love them, they're so great, and this is so fun, and blah blah blah. But then as you get scammed more and more, or weird emails more and more, or talk to people and then they ghost you, you kind of, it's not like you get hardened to it, but you are very much more optimistic about the truth. But then at some point you have to, I think the biggest thing, honestly, that I can say with adoption and with anything, because we do have open adoption with all three of our birth parents, is vulnerability. 100% the biggest thing that I can say is vulnerability with these people, because you have to become friends with these birth parents the way that we did it. And because we didn't involve, adoption agencies or anything else, we did all the grunt work ourselves. And so you have to be open and willing to talk about like the hard things, and your lifestyle, their lifestyle, your beliefs, their beliefs. And when you both feel it, because it's not just our decision, and it's not just their decision either. It was a group effort. Yes, they asked us if we would adopt their baby, but it was also, is this right for our family as well? And so I think when you make that decision, you're also making a decision to adopt their birth parents and birth siblings as well into the family. And that's what we have done. We've actually taken in Ellis's 2 biological siblings as well for a period of a year. So we had his 14-year-old brother live with us for 7 months. His birth mother called and asked if we could help out with him for a while, just because they had a living situation. And then last year, we actually took in his 5-year-old sister. So we had her for 4 months.
That was hard to watch her go. I'm sorry. I was watching from the outside. That kind of ripped my heart because I knew you were looking for a little girl. And I'm like, no, isn't it her?
Yeah, I know.
Bob, to kind of respond to like your question, like how do you put like that feeling, the emotion, like into action? Like how do you like move forward? I think having 2 biological children, once they're there. You kind of have to just say, okay, this is it. You have to move forward, right? And so I feel like once you feel like that commitment is there on the adoptive parent's part, and you do find a match with a birth mom, and when baby does come or the child that you're adopting comes, I think at that point that's when you okay, this is it, this is happening, and you move forward. And so when our kids were born, that's, like I said, the feeling was the same, and it was a feeling of it was incredible. And all right, they're here now. we've got 2 newborn babies that we got to deal with, and so we just move forward and our parents. So
well, so that you know, and I know our listeners and viewers know this too, but we went through a very similar situation with you guys. I mean, we were on the heels. We were bringing Emily home from the hospital. She was born 100 days early at 26 and a half weeks gestation. And we'd just gone through all of that. And she was finally 4 pounds, 10 ounces, ready to come home on her due date from the hospital. And we get a phone call on our way up to the hospital
with
to pick
all
her
the
up.
gift bags,
with all the gift bags for the
nurses,
NICU nurses and the doctors and everything who took care of her. And the phone call was,
I'm pregnant. Do you want him?
Do you want him? And
what?
we kind of looked at each other and we thought,
but it's amazing. I mean, you're right. They find their families.
Without question.
So now you've got these 2 little boys. They're starting and growing. I mean, everyone who follows you on Instagram knows that how loved they were as babies, and now how much they're loved as they're growing. I mean, they are your family. They are yours, and you are theirs. What happens next? You don't have chickens yet. You just have 2 little boys.
Yeah, so we were kind of in that process of just surviving virtual twins, Irish twins, whatever you want to call them. And I was working still as a nurse practitioner. I was super busy. He was busy, and I felt deep down that he was done at that point. And I felt deep down that there was a girl. We had 4 boys, and I was like, I don't want to be the only girl here. I mean. And so, I was still on social media and everything else. And it was in 2019, in October, that we had been kind of talking about it throughout the year. And he's like, I'm not ready. I do not feel like we can take on another child at this point. And I felt deep down, I said, well, I feel like there's a little girl out there, just as you had said to me, that you felt like, and I always worried, like, am I ever going to be done, adopting babies? Because I love children. So anyway, I was contacted in October by one of my Instagram followers of 2019. And she sent me a message, and I get hundreds of messages. So I have thousands I've never seen. But she contacted me and said, hey, there's this lady who posted in a Facebook mommy group asking about babies and whatnot. Can you maybe message her and tell her about adoption? So I had already helped match 5 other families with babies as well through my Instagram that had contacted us. And again, we weren't ready to adopt. So I helped them, pick from a number of, adoptive parents. Anyway, I messaged her, never heard anything back, didn't think about it. A month later, I got a message back that said, hey, sorry, I didn't see this. I haven't been on Facebook. And we started talking. And this was, like I said, October. We continued to talk. And at that time, we also got another message from another woman who was pregnant as well. And she'd followed me on Instagram. And I continued talking with both of them. And still at this time, we weren't like 100% like, hey, we're going to go through with this. So I continued talking with the one birth mom, and I could tell that she wanted to parent her child. And so we talked about ways for her to be able to do that. She actually ended up keeping the baby and parenting him. And she actually named him after our child. So she named him Ellis. And he's so cute, and we still text and talk, and she's awesome, an amazing mom. In February of 2020, so last year, the other birth mom went in for an ultrasound, and she came out and FaceTimed me, and she said, I am pregnant with a little baby girl. And she said, I want to go through with this. Do you guys want to go through with this? And I was sobbing and ugly crying and everything else.
Not Instagram crying, but real crying.
No.
Isn't it interesting that the most beautiful moments in our lives, we are ugly crying, right?
It was ugly. It was ugly crying. And then he got home from work, and I had like a little pink candy heart out, and I put it in my wedding ring box actually. And he opened it and he's like, thanks for the candy. And I was like, no, babe, it's a little girl. It's a little girl. And he just kept saying, no way, and started crying. And our little Lola was then born on June 2nd of 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. And
oh boy,
they had only just opened on that Friday. They had said that 2 guests were now allowed in for pregnancy, for birth. And she was born on a Tuesday. And that next Monday, they vetoed that and made it back to 1 visitor. So Jason wasn't supposed to be there, but for 1 week, they opened it to 2 visitors, and we were able to be there at her birth, and she stayed in a room with us in the hospital, and it was awesome. So
the clouds parted and the sun shone.
Is that
she found
not
us?
crazy?
I know.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that. And she found us.
And that's so hard when somebody tells you that. It's irritating. You lived it. I've lived it. Like,
Yep.
What do you mean they're gonna find us? I have to find them. Move. You know?
Yeah.
Oh wow, you guys.
This truly, you have told us 3 wonderful stories about how you're not in charge. We're not in charge. None of us are in charge of this. So, I mean, and I don't know how more profoundly we can learn that than to live through these experiences and realize that God knows where his children belong. He just knows where they belong, and he knows how to get them to us.
Yep, so, they found us.
now, Jason, before we wind up here, I just got to ask you, because you and I are kindred spirits here. Our wives have, brought us up to the edge of the cliff and turned to us and said, well, aren't you going to jump?
Yeah.
And how do you come to reconcile little Lola's entry into your family and those times when you have really, and as guys, we're different from the gals. We think differently, we feel differently. But how did you reconcile the motions, the movement that Heather was obviously going through that brought you along to that point? How do you reconcile then linking arms and hands and jumping together off that cliff?
You know, I said that it was you know, one of the hardest decisions as far as our 3 adoptions with Ellis, but I would say that, you know, our first 2 adoptions we were together, kind of, I guess, hand in hand. Once we just made the decisions for both, we made the journey together. And when we adopted Lola, it wasn't that way, because like she said, I was done having kids. We had 4 breathing boys. And, you know, I think for women, a lot of times, I know for Heather specifically, she wasn't done having kids. And she, you know, that when women are in that mode of something that they, you know, wanting to have kids, that is the mode that they're in. And there's not really redirecting at all.
Stand back is what you're saying.
And she really wanted to support me and include me and make sure that it was a decision that we both made, and not just her doing something that she wanted to do, because it's bringing a child into this world and into this family. And so adopting Lola was not even on the table for me at the time, but it's just something that we had kind of, like, I'd moved along with in the process and wasn't really involved, but we communicated about, and ultimately I decided that, you know, all right, fine, we'll adopt another baby. And none of my kids are around right now. I love all of my kids dearly, but I will tell you that Lola might be my favorite. And I never admit to any of my other kids, but
your secret is safe with us. So.
Kind of.
You know, like I said, Heather that was something that she was on her mind continuously. And, you know, we tried to go through the process together as much as we could, and we had differences, but just supporting each other. And you know, I think she feels that fulfillment now. She feels like our family is complete, and you can see that in the things that she thinks and talks about, and the way that our family unit feels now. You can tell that this is the family that the way the Orm family was supposed to be. So
Wow. As we're closing, guys, anything to say to someone who is just starting this journey? I mean, it can be a roller coaster, it can be a smooth ride, it can be a surprise. Any little hashtag adoption waiting hacks? There you go. Adoption waiting hacks. Something that you both might say to someone that gives you a call, messages you on Instagram, like, what do I do? How do I start this? Where do I go? Give me some hope type ideas.
I think just like we talked about, for me, it was kind of keeping up that wall a little bit to kind of weed through some of the negativity at first, but then once that feeling, that mental and emotional feeling of this is meant to be, just let it happen, because they will come to you when they're supposed to come to you. And when that feeling comes, you know that you're going to have a child soon.
And I would say probably the biggest thing, like I said, is vulnerability. But one of the best advice that I ever got was tell everyone, literally tell everyone. And I have a ton of friends all over the world that are adoptive parents. And the best advice I could give anybody is you have to tell the people at the grocery store. You have to tell your mailman. You tell your neighbors. That was the biggest thing. We shared it on Facebook, and we told every single one of my friends, all like 600 people or whatever at the time, share this message. Just click and share this post. And within 3 weeks, it was seen by like 600,000 people. And because of that post is how Ellis's birth mom found us. And so, and then, I mean, obviously you can see that through that, I mean, Lola's birth mom found us that way. And so I can just honestly say, tell everybody. One of ours found them through an OBGYN, and she was just telling them, yeah, like, hey, we're gonna, you know, go through the adoption process. So it just, and then they had another mom who came in who was pregnant, who was looking to find a family. So it just all connects as far as that goes. So I can tell you that it is an emotional roller coaster. Make sure that you support each other and talk about, hey, why is it hard for you, or what are your thoughts on the process? And as much as you can, try and be on the same page with things, and just make sure you're ready and you're prepared for it, because it will come when you least expect it, but it will come how it absolutely should.
Oh, you
That
guys
is
are
just
awesome. I'm just saying,
beautiful.
goosebump after goosebump. But
Well, and two, I mean, you guys could do a tutorial on how to work out the most important issues in your life together, and wind up happy and supportive of each other. I mean, what an excellent example of how to work out these major things together. So thank you so much. Our guests on the podcast today have been Jason and Heather Orm. She is a social media influencer, 204,000 followers on Instagram.
that's awesome.
You can find her at Heather Kroc on Instagram, and Jason, a design engineer for a corporate security company, but father of 5 beautiful children. And together they have this beautiful family. And on top of that, Heather is a chicken lady. So
I got my chickens, right?
well, thank you so much, you two. We have just savored every moment of our time together, and we appreciate so much you taking time to be part of the podcast. And we are grateful that you are setting such a beautiful and wonderful example to not only everybody you know, but to us and the whole world. So God bless you in your work and in your family.
Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
for having us. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah,
Well,
I
it's
love you
been a
guys so
major
much.
treat. So thank you.
This is the Evans Life, a remarkable adventure.